I attribute this to like the 08-09 crash because I've seen the difference. Since then, before 08-09, a lot of clients, their loyalty almost was more with the firm than with the financial advisor, right? Especially if you were at like a Merrill Lynch or a Morgan Stanley, right? After 08-09, when that whole disaster hit, I mean, I guess there's some people that haven't even been in this business during 08-09, which is sort of scary, but
they're old.
I know. The attitude towards the who owned the relationship in the client's mind shifted, and it shifted towards the financial advisor.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners. It's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and a direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. And now, welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and joined by my lovely co-host, Vanna White. No, just kidding.
In another life.
Dating us a little bit, right? In another life. Stacey Frank. Stacey, Executive Vice President of Sales and Master of Advisor Transition, Psychology, Therapist, Local, everything.
Master Profiler.
Pickleball Champion.
Yeah. Happy to be back after all that.
So today is going to be an interesting topic. We're going to talk about inaction, but really what we're going to talk about is no decision is still a decision. So think about that, right? So a lot of advisors that we talk to say they're not ready to make a decision. I'm like, okay, well, that's a decision too, right? And this came up because I was talking to somebody who isn't really happy at the firm that they're at, but their decision is to just stay where they're at because they don't want to go through a discovery process. And it's okay. So you're making a decision to stay at a firm that you don't like. And the other question I asked him was, if you were doing your due diligence, let's say you were not at firm A, and you were doing your due diligence of firms, and your firm, firm A, was one of the firms that you were talking to, would you join that firm knowing what you know now? And he's like, hell no. My answer to that was, then why are you staying there? And that is the conundrum that I think a lot of advisors face or put themselves in. And some of it is, and you've talked about this before, is, you know, this sort of this inaction, right? They don't want to, it's not that they don't want to work hard, but they feel like it's too much work. They don't want to go through the process, and it's easier just to stay, right? It's like inertia. It doesn't make that the right decision. And I think that advisors, maybe now, you know, look, some advisors, maybe they moved to that firm many, many, many years ago when transitioning wasn't as easy, right? When there was a higher risk of losing client assets than there is today. And I think that advisors need to think about that. And you need to be evaluating your firm, not all the time, but annually or every couple of years, just to see what's out there, because you don't know what you don't know. And the evolution of the space, I'll say the space, the evolution of all of the firms in the industry continues to get better. And that on the W-2 side, there's some really good W-2 firms out there. There's some newer W-2 models out there. LPL has, you know, their Linsco model, which is really interesting, right? It's W-2, but you still feel you're in an independent environment. So Raymond James, it's always had that, right? They have W-2 and 1099 model. But there's other firms. Stewart Partners is another good one. You know, great friends of mine that I've known a long time. They have a W-2 model, but it's like it gives you the feel of being independent, right?
Yeah, one thing I just want to comment on, just the initial point of this podcast, is that we often see advisors make the decision to not make a decision. And I think it's really attributed to two main things that I see in conversations with the advisors that I talk to. One is the path of least resistance is just the path of least resistance. It's the easy way out. It's the I don't really need to do anything. I'm kind of in my comfort zone. But in reality, they know deep down that by staying right where they are, they're not going to achieve their goals, but it's easier to just stay the course. So that's number one. And then I'll let you comment on that. The other one that I've seen on the flip side is advisors that look at 10, 12, 14 firms. I have a team right now that's going through this paralysis by analysis. So it's really, there's two ideas here. Path of least resistance contributes to deciding not to decide, and then also paralysis by analysis, sort of masking. This is a lot of psychology here. Sort of masking the same thing. So why don't you comment on path of least resistance and paralysis by analysis? Those are real things.
Yeah. If you do and you go through the process the right way, making a transition is not that difficult. Doing it on your own can be difficult. Then it's like herding cats. What I mean by herding cats, it becomes exhausting because you're taking calls from different recruiting firms or people at those firms. I'm just saying recruiting, the recruiters at those firms, right? And then you're probably talking to a couple of recruiters, and all of a sudden it becomes your full-time job. And maybe you're not paying attention to your clients, whatever it is, you're like getting burned out from this process, and then you decide, you know what, I'm just going to stay here.
Right. Too much information. All at once, and don't know how to manage it.
Right. And that's where I'm working with. This is our 15-second pitch here, right? Which is not the intent, but you know what I mean. That's where working with a consultant is so wise, because other respectable consulting firms out there. There are some that I don't really have a lot of respect for how they approach things and what they do. But there are some that I think are very good to work with and have a similar approach as us. But we take a client through a really deliberate process so that it doesn't inundate them. It doesn't wear them out. We are there to help filter out the noise. I have a client right now. We did a couple phone calls. We did a couple calls, initial calls, whatever. Two of the firms. I usually typically start with 5 firms because I want to have a spectrum of options so they can. It's about education at the beginning, right? So I start with usually 5 firms, and there's a spectrum within whatever it is that they're looking for, right? Usually throw in 1 firm or 2 that maybe are not outside the box, but not the traditional ones based on what they were looking for, based on what I think that they might have interest in, right? Which is part of my job. It's like, I'll give you an example of, so I'm getting my race helmet painted, right? And I have this guy, and it's a very, it's not inexpensive to have a helmet painted. And you got to be careful. You don't want to ruin it. It's all carbon fiber, and so it's going to be painted. Anyway, so I said to the guy, that's what I'm thinking, and I use ChatGPT and all that other stuff. That reminds me. That's the next topic. We're going to talk about chat, AI. But anyway, so I talked to this guy, and he's passionate about what he does, and he tells me he walks me through his process. Because like, what's the process? I don't know how this whole works. So I tell you what I want. He goes, well, we'll go through a process. I'll understand what you're all about, what the helmet represents for you, all that other stuff, right? So I give him an idea. Like for me, when I put my helmet on, I feel like I'm a transformer. I know it sounds funny, but when I put my helmet on, it's sort of like game time. I feel like I become part of the car. I become part of the machine.
Yeah, this is confession time.
Yeah, but I said, that's what I'm thinking. So he took me through this process, very much like what we do. He wanted to understand what my vision was, right? Of
whatever it is.
Not like, what colors do you like, right? He didn't even ask me what colors. He just, what's your vision, right? How do you want to feel when you put your helmet on? Literally what he asked me. Like, oh my God, you sound like me.
Yeah.
It matters. But the point was, I gave him some ideas, and he said, well, listen, that's good, and we'll talk through more about that once I get your helmet and all that other stuff. He goes, but my goal is to give you something so special and to come up with ideas that you don't even know about. Meaning, to think of, my job is to help you think of things that you don't think of so that your helmet is really special.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And that's really what we do. Yeah. Right? We introduce advisors. I was just on the phone just 5 minutes before this call with an advisor, and I said, listen, if you're open to it, if you're willing to talk to smaller firms, we work with some amazing smaller firms, right, that I think culturally you'll really click with. They're not going to give you as much money as some of these bigger firms, but they're what you're telling me you're looking for.
I'm seeing those firms be a lot more, let's just use the term, competitive than they were in the past.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they know they've had to come up from 5% of trailing 12 to whatever the number is these days.
50, 60, 80, whatever.
We're seeing it left and right. But back to your point, I just want to comment on that, is that there's nothing better than when, just like you went through with your helmet situation, when an advisor says, no one's ever asked me that question in that way.
Right.
Or I had no idea that XYZ existed.
Right.
No one's ever made me aware that I can actually accomplish X. And so when that occurs, like the experience you just had with your helmet, that occurs in our everyday with the way we work with our financial advisors to help them cut through some of this decision fatigue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because what I was worried about was, because I had gotten an email from another painter, right? Someone in the UK or something. This guy's in the United States. And he sent me this list of, well, it's this and this, and if you want this color, it's this much more, and if you want metallic, and if you want chrome, it was like a laundry list. When I read that email, I got anxiety. I'm like, I can't, because I have a busy life. I can't spend
too much information.
And that's what happens when you go about this on your own. You get flooded with information. You have no filter. So what we're able to do is filter that stuff out, and we have conversations ahead of time. So like with this advisor I just talked to, he said, yes, I'll talk to them. I said, great. I will have some conversations on your behalf. I won't use your name, but I will look into the things that you're telling me that you want, just to make sure that, I already know the answers, but I want to just run it past them. Hey, I have this client. This is what he's looking for. He's definitely looking for a little bit of money. Where are you guys at right now? Just so I don't waste his time, because he doesn't want to waste time. And so when we get back to this original, not making a decision is still a decision, and staying at a firm that full well is not the right firm for you is a bad decision.
And how many times have you come across a financial advisor that has said to you, Frank, I'm here, I'm willing to listen, but I'm not really looking. I'm not really going to move. I'm kind of happy where I am, and actually come to the plate with initial conversations with the firms that we introduced to and say the same thing to ultimately move in 90 days, 6 months, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, because I think we're peeling back the layer of the decision fatigue, right?
Yeah, well, because they don't know what they don't know.
Right, and that's what this process does.
Right, and so, look, the message here, and it's not meant to be a long, drawn-out conversation, but the message really is, don't sit idly by while your firm does things that frustrate you, because that sucks your energy. We talk about energy a lot on this podcast. That sucks your energy, probably more than anyone. It sucks your team's energy, right? Support staff with compliance and all this other stuff. There are solutions out there that are, I'll say, better than where you're at most of the time. And the reason I say better than where you're at, there's a lot of firms out there, and they're mostly good. Right? I mean, mostly good.
They all eventually start looking the same.
They all start. I can't really think of. I can think maybe one or two firms that aren't great, right? Where I would be like, you don't want to go there, right? Like literally don't want to go there. But for the most part, every firm is pretty good. And the big few firms on the LPL side, LPL, Zakes, Terra, they're all good firms, right? Maybe one's better for you than the other. That's where we come in and we help. We help with that. But if you're at a firm, regardless of what the firm is, and you know that they're not helping you for one reason or another get to the goals that you want, achieve your fulfillment, adding friction to your team, whatever it is, right? The economics, they keep changing your comp. If you're in the W-2 side, they keep changing your compensation. You owe it to yourself to take a look around. And I can promise you it's not as difficult as you think it's going to be, because especially when you're working with someone like us or a couple other firms out there. I use the Tom Brady example all the time. When Tom Brady wanted to leave the Patriots, he could have called any business owner, any of the owners of the teams that he wanted, and they all would have taken his call, right? They would have probably get on their jet and go fly to him. But he didn't. He called his agent, and he gave his agent a list of things he was looking for. Then the agent went out and did all the work and brought that information back to Tom. So he didn't waste time, and he can focus on what he was doing at the moment, right? And ultimately, He found, Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Super Bowl. Everybody all know the story, right? We essentially do the same thing, right? We represent really high quality advisors that have needs. We find out what those needs are, and we go to the firms. We represent the advisors to those firms and help solve those problems. Transitions, listen, transitions are never easy, but I've been doing this for 30 years, right? They have gotten significantly easier over the years, right?
More automated, more efficient.
Yeah, more automated, more efficient, DocuSign, all these other things, the time it takes to transfer, what clients need to give you in order to actually put an ACAT in, right? It's gotten so much better than ever before. And the other thing is, and I attribute this to like the 08-09 crash because I've seen the difference. Since then, before 08-09, a lot of clients, their loyalty almost was more with the firm than with the financial advisor, right? Especially if you were at like a Merrill Lynch or a Morgan Stanley, right? After 08-09, when that whole disaster hit, I guess there's some people that haven't even been in this business during 08 and 09, which is sort of scary, but
they're old.
I know. The attitude towards who owned the relationship in the client's mind shifted, and it shifted towards the financial advisor, for sure. That's why when we see, I'll just say the average transition, advisors are moving anywhere between 80 to 90% of their assets in the first 30 to 45 days, and generally 12 months later, they have more than 100% of their original assets on platform. And I'm saying a year. Some firms, LPL is one of them. I think one of their stats is something like 110% of their original assets after 6 months, right? So don't let this whole fear of like, well, it's going to be difficult for us to do. We're going to lose a little bit of revenue. That's why they're paying you a lot of money to move, right?
I also think, and I had a conversation yesterday with an advisor that runs his client's money a very specific way. He uses a TAMP, right? So he says, Stace, I get these calls all the time. I'm not really going anywhere. I do something very specific, and all these firms want me to just change the way that I'm running money. So I'm just deciding to just stay put. There's nothing really out there. And I was like, wow, boy, have you been caught in the mode of misconception. And so we talked through the platform that he uses, the TAMP that he uses for his client's money. And as soon as I made him aware that there's so many firms out there that will not tell you how to service your clients and the investment strategies that you use, and actually some will pay you, not as much as a non-platform firm, but will pay you money to obtain those assets. They want you to come over to, bring over those relationships. So I'm here to tell you that there's so many options. There's a solution for everything. And don't let a sales recruiter mindset say, well, you have to go to this firm because they offer the biggest check, but they're going to have you, put all your client assets on XYZ platform, on a specific platform. That's so not true. So if you're getting stuck in making a decision, should I stay or should I go? Just know that there is a customized solution for pretty much everything.
Everything.
I haven't found anything yet other than some really proprietary sticky assets. But for the most part,
we can solve almost any advisor's not problem, but need. I'll say need, right? Because sometimes it's not always a problem; it's a need.
Before you decide to not decide,
right,
at least go through the exercise and know what you don't know. I think that's the point.
What I say to advisors: know what you're saying no to.
Know what you're saying no to.
Right.
This was eye-opening. I can't even believe that those calls go out there.
I know.
Incorrect.
So anyway, know what you're saying no to. So KNOW. Know what you're saying no to. If you have any questions, you want to talk about this, you want to understand and learn what you don't know, right? We're happy to have that conversation. There's no cost to it, meaning we'll jump on a call, we'll talk about your situation, give you examples of way we've probably solved that problem in the past. You've been doing this now with me for quite a while, but I've been doing this a long time. So I don't know how many, I've lost count how many advisors I've recruited over the really since I started as a branch manager, which is like 2004. So, 20 something years. Thought I started as branch manager. No, 99, 20. So 2000. Let's call it 2000. I moved to Smith Barney in 1999, became a manager in 2000.
It's a long time.
So 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
So I've moved a few advisors. Don't sit around. What frustrates me the most is when I talk to an advisor and they literally admittedly say they're not happy where they're at, and then they do nothing. It's painful. It's painful to hear because we can help, and that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We're trying to help as best we can, but you have to let us help you. Help
us,
me, help you, right? Help me, help you.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Isn't that the Jerry Maguire thing? Help me, help you, right? And we'll show you the money. Bum. All right, we're finishing on that. That was a good ending. So anyway, if you have any questions, you can give us a call. Obviously, you can call Stacey at
856-816-6322. Stacey at EliteConsultingPartners.com. Stacey, don't forget the E, or Frank at
EliteConsultingPartners.com. 856-316-4651. It'll be in the notes. Don't forget to check out my Instagram account, which is franklarosa.elite. There's some really cool things on there. There's podcast stuff. There's some great videos, general entrepreneurship stuff, things that I feel like at the moment an advisor needs to hear. So if I could be of help, if I could give you one piece of advice that you take to your team or to your business or to whatever, your family, whatever, then I've done my job. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics relating to the financial services industry, or just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to EliteConsultingPartners.com/podcast.